Hello and welcome to another episode of the Personal Transformation Experience podcast with Maureen and David Brand. Today we're going to talk about the importance of modeling the behavior we expect from our children. And this has been a topic of conversation for us lately because you, in your day job as a coach of parents who have neurodiverse children, often see parents seeking you out or speaking to you from the angle of, hey, how can you fix my child? My child doesn't listen to me. They're rude, whatever the adjective is. And, walk us through kind of, because I find it fascinating that the parents are thinking that you're going to get hired just to work with the kids and they're going to kind of watch you fix their kids. So how does that work?
It's interesting. Well, I will say that I was under the same sort of notion when my own child was younger. I'm going to fix my kid. I got to figure out how to fix my kid. And I know so many other parents said the same thing. I had a parent recently say, I thought she was fixed. I thought it was fixed. She had all the early intervention and, all this therapy and, I thought it was fixed and it would be better.
Yeah.
But no, we don't fix our kids. Our kids are not broken. They just, especially if they're neurodiverse, they're just wired differently. Their brains are wired differently. So they're experiencing the world and the things that you say and, their environment differently and they're responding to it differently. So I think my number one sort of perspective that I meet parents with is if they want to change the way their children are responding to them, they need to change the way they respond to their kids first.
Yeah. And I love that because when I think about leadership at work, because I'm a leader of a team in a financial organization, we talk about being the change that we want to see. If we want to see other people change, we've got to model that first. We've got to lead from our seat.
From example. I mean, there's so many, sayings about it, so many quotes, lead from example, be the change you want to see. But it's really true. I mean, it really does, especially when it comes to parenting, because children learn through observation and repetition. Basically, I mean, what they see, they model and they repeat, they mimic, right? So you want your child to echo your sounds and your words so they can learn how to speak and communicate. You show them how to do something so that they can do it for themselves. You teach them how to dress, you teach them how to eat, you show them, but through modeling. And the same goes true for emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. If you want your child to be able to regulate their emotions, you need to model specifically and explicitly that behavior.
So you're saying as parents, we need to be able to regulate our own emotions.
Yes. And it's not always easy. I mean, I didn't grow up. Nobody taught me the skills. So children, as we know, and this is very much in line with Dr. Kennedy's philosophy, is children are born, and it's true, they're born with none of the skills and all the emotions.
Right.
Our job is to guide them and teach them how to experience the world with those emotions because we are emotional people. There's no, take the emotions out, there's logic. No, we are emotional beings and we're going to move forward and behave from those emotions. So that's what we have to teach our children. I think it's probably one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable skill that you can model and teach your child because it will take them through their whole lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the title of this podcast is Personal Transformation. And I think how far I've come in the last 15 years or so in learning about these strategies and skill sets and how important it is for the parent. And I think back 15 years ago, I met emotional dysregulation for my children was met with my own emotional dysregulation. Guess what? It didn't really solve the problem. And I think now, if I think about, okay, what would I do differently today with the knowledge I have now? If I went back in time to that screaming 5-year-old who was defying me or disobeying me, I would have, instead of standing with my 5'11" self screaming down at their 3-foot self or however tall they were and saying, I'm the parent and it's my job to give you the rules and it's your job to listen to me, which is essentially what I said. Which just got into a shouting match.
Oh my gosh.
A power struggle. So knowing what I know now, I would have got down on my knees and I would have said, listen to me. I know this is hard. You don't agree with what Daddy is telling you. You don't like what Daddy is telling you, but it's Daddy's job to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And the behavior you're showing me right now is not behavior I can allow you to have because it's not keeping you safe.
Right.
And so acknowledging, validating those feelings, you don't agree, this is hard, but this is what we're doing.
Yeah, this is really upsetting for you. Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, I think that's kind of all of it. You know, when you don't get down that level, I think a lot of times parents, their children are going to trigger every emotional trauma, if you have that, or everything you have. They're going to trigger those emotions in you, and you're going to, get angry. And the biggest thing you want to avoid is that power struggle. You don't want to. They know that you're in charge, but you need to embody your authority, not the power over your child.
Right.
Because then they're feeling small and insignificant and scared. And you're this big, powerful person who, and especially if they're defiant, if
right.
They're going to dig their heels in. So you want to embody your authority and teach them rather than demand that they not disrespect you. Again, they're not trying to, they don't have the skills, right? They're
right.
children. She was 3 at the time, your daughter. So it was, or 4 maybe. I don't even
5,
know. She was a toddler. Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, still too young to be expected to have the skills.
And even teenagers, I have parents that have 9-year-olds, and
they don't really have the skills either. So and the other thing that I've been thinking about related to this too is how many times I might have in anger said to one of my children, "I don't care if this upsets you." And actually, that's not appropriate, right? Because then you're teaching your children
not to
that
care.
You have to obey whatever rules there are, and it doesn't matter how you feel.
Or
you're not allowed to have that feeling.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Even worse, you're teaching your child that their feelings don't matter.
Right.
And that they shouldn't care about them. They shouldn't care about your feelings. They shouldn't care about their feelings don't matter.
Right.
Everybody has permission to feel, right? Thank you, Dr. Brackett, for making that a thing. But yeah, everybody has permission to feel. And it's the behavior, right, that you have to be mindful of when you have certain emotions.
Yeah.
So you want to validate the emotions. I know this is really hard. You're having some really big feelings around this. This is hard.
And those feelings are okay.
Right. You're allowed to have these feelings, and it's appropriate to have these feelings, especially if a child, feels bad about something that happened. It's appropriate, right? Something happened at school, a child was mean, or maybe they lied, or maybe they took something they weren't supposed to and they feel guilty. That's an appropriate response, right? So you're glad. That's a sign or a signal that what you did wasn't in line with what you believe is good, right? A value. Mm-hmm. So I think that you want to validate those emotions because usually they're spot on based on the circumstance or situation. So that just validating their emotions and letting them know, yes, that's an appropriate response. And we still can't have candy before dinner, because it's not what, you won't be able to, eat the healthy food. And I mean, whatever reason, whatever boundary you want to hold, you can hold that boundary while you still get information from the child about their feelings and their emotions, and you validate them. Right. And even if you have a negative response, like, please, how many times I yelled at my kid, screamed, got upset, lost my shit. Right. It happens to all of us. We're all human. But the most important thing is, I had a parent who's been doing it a lot. She's really struggling. She's a single mom, and I get it. When you feel like you're the only one and you're tapped out you're working at 5%. I mean, you can't, have an opportunity to recharge your batteries, and you have to work with a child who is neurodivergent and struggling with their own emotions and on the cusp of puberty.
Yeah.
That's not easy. That is very challenging. So I think it's really important that repair be one of the big things. I tell parents top two things I talk to parents and tell them they have to remember: self-care, repair. Self-care, repair, self-care, repair. Those are the two, because you're gonna lose it. It's not if, it's when.
Let's be clear about repair, because I think sometimes people get hung up on this idea that, hey, I don't owe my kid an apology, right? So what you don't need to apologize for is the rule or the boundary that you're setting, right?
Right.
You know, I'm sorry that you can't have candy for dinner, right? And you don't need to say that, or right. I'm sorry.
I made you feel this way.
I'm sorry, right? Or
that
say,
doesn't
I'm
work.
sorry I made you feel this way, right? You're not responsible,
right,
for the feeling, right? You're responsible for the boundary you're setting, or I'm sorry that you're mad at me, right? None of those things are what we're talking about here. What you can repair on is how you are emotionally dysregulated, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I know I just yelled at you. I know that must have been scary, and you must be upset about that. That was wrong. I'm sorry I yelled.
Yeah.
And no buts, no ifs.
Yeah.
And I will next time I get upset, I will do better. I will do better next time. I will take a deep breath, and I will, however your strategy is, I will count, I will tell you I'm frustrated and mommy's getting frustrated and angry and I need a minute. So you never have to yell.
Right.
You never have to yell.
Right. We don't need escalated voices.
Because what happens when we yell and scream and then send the child to the room? Does anything get accomplished? No. Maybe you just get the child out of your hair. Maybe that's what you feel like is accomplished. But that child is now alone in their room with emotions that they don't know how to process and feeling like everything's their fault. And what just happened to mommy, why mommy or daddy just got upset is their fault. And it's not their fault. Mommy and daddy just got upset because they were not able to regulate their own emotions in the moment.
Right.
So that's not the model you want to set. If you want your child to respond a certain way and learn how to regulate their emotion, you need to teach it explicitly to that child. You need to demonstrate how you are regulating your own emotions. And that child will then see you do that. And when you do lose it, because you will then repair and say, you know what? I just yelled.
Yep.
I know that was really scary. You can even ask your child, how do you feel? And your child...
And you should. Yeah, I agree with that.
And allow your child to express their emotion freely without you getting mad at them. You don't have to, there's no reason to sit there and talk about all the reasons why you got mad and why No. That's not... They're going to tune out. They're going to kind of look at you like deer in the headlights because they're not processing that.
But you can hold yourself accountable for your behavior while also holding your child accountable for your behavior. This works in leadership settings too. I know there's times I've had to coach leaders that were lacking emotional intelligence and getting dysregulated in how they responded to an employee behavior conversation. So it's okay to say, my behavior, my response to you wasn't appropriate. Yeah. Your behavior was still not appropriate also, right? So I'm not, you want to make sure the kid too, I think, is what I'm trying to say, is just because the parent is repairing doesn't mean, hey, it's okay, your behavior is okay. Maybe you need to reinforce with certain kids that... Well,
I would pull back on that a little bit, because if you're going to repair, you don't want to put it back on the other person. So rather than saying, hey, my behavior was not appropriate, even in the workplace, but your behavior wasn't. No, my response to your behavior was not appropriate. I didn't like the way you behaved, and I responded in a negative way. So how could we have done things differently? I know I could have done this and this differently.
That's fair too.
How do you think you could have done things differently?
That's a great question.
How do you think how do you think you could have responded differently to this situation?
Well, I love it, and I want to make sure we're all crystal clear for people watching. So what you're saying is, you're saying that you acknowledge you could have done something differently, and then you're asking your child or your employee, what do you feel you could have done differently?
Yeah,
right,
and this is how
now you can see if they've learned from your model too.
Yeah, and this is how I do it with my own kid. Being 20, They know better. They know. And not that they know better, but when you're upset in the moment, you can't typically respond in a reasonable way because you've been hijacked. Your brain's hijacked with your emotional center. You don't have the capacity at that time, but you can soon thereafter say, you know what? I see that this was a really hard thing that happened to you today. And, this person was not nice. And how do you feel about your response? And do you think you could have done something differently? And they'll come back and say, yeah, what do you think you could have done differently? I could have walked away. I didn't have to say what I said. I didn't have to escalate it, adding fuel to the fire. I mean, whatever it was. I know there was a situation at one point with my kid at school and somebody said something nasty and she just responded with a nasty retort, so.
Yeah. Well, that's because neurodiverse children are less likely to pick up on social cues.
Yes.
They are less likely to be able to read a room,
yes.
right, and understand and differentiate behavior in this setting is not okay in this setting.
Yeah,
and that's why the modeling of the behavior, the parent modeling is even more critical when you are parenting neurodiverse children.
Right, because they need to be able to generalize that skill. And that's one of the greatest challenges with a neurodiverse child. Mm-hmm. Typically, neurotypical kids can generalize their skill. They learn it in one place, they can bring it throughout any other environment. But neurodiverse kids don't make those generalizations easily. So now my kid is in school and this person may not have ever liked her, for whatever reason. This person may have didn't realize that she was neurodiverse and didn't, annoyed her or whatever. I mean, I'm going to annoy people. My kid probably annoys people. She probably was annoyed by my child and my daughter, and Finn wasn't picking up on it, didn't recognize it. She's like, I don't know why, she said that. She was so mean. She wasn't picking up. She didn't pick up on that, right? Whereas certain times she could be super sensitive to people that she knows and is familiar and she's engaging with, but there are people when she doesn't know you, she's not aware. She's not aware. So just like I'm hypersensitive to certain individuals when I can feel like somebody's got tension or whatever. I could be sensitive to somebody else's emotions. But if you're not on my radar, I'm not going to recognize anything. I'm not paying attention. Right.
Well, radar for a neurodiverse child is very different.
Yes.
Yeah. What is on the radar? They may not just like they may go on and telling a story when it's obvious a bunch of people, obvious to who? Obvious to a neurotypical person that the other people aren't interested.
Right.
They keep going.
Right.
Right. So you have.
Right. You see the glances. People are looking at each other. Right. Like looking at their phone and
And that's why as a parent of a neurodiverse child, you have to have a little more patience too and understanding, so everyone can benefit. Every parent can benefit from making sure they're modeling the right behaviors and being able to repair, as we talked about. But it's more critical with a neurodiverse child who doesn't always, get it right immediately. Right? They may take, some more direct explanation, like, hey, when you were telling a story to somebody and there was a couple people checking their watch, did you notice that? Yeah, I thought they were just checking to see what time it was.
Right.
Well, actually, when you're talking for a long time, people are checking their watch. That's indication that
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, it could be indication that they're bored or want to move on. So that's just a quick example.
Yeah.
But this is why neurodiverse children need a little bit more.
Yeah. And
hand-holding with the emotional and social skills.
Yeah, I want to circle back to something I said earlier about that children learn through observation and repetition. So I have a lot of parents. I told them this once already. I told them about this, and they keep forgetting. Well, you're gonna have to tell them 1,000 more times.
Oh yeah,
right. So I mean, that's why we have nursery rhymes. That's why we have songs that are repetitive over and over, like the ABCs. There's a beginning, middle, and end. Like we talk about stories. Stories have a beginning, middle, and end. They're predictable, and they're simple, and that's how we learn. And we have the same kind of concept in a story, the same lesson in a story told 10 different ways.
Yeah.
Right. So we're attacking you from different angles. How many times do you have to practice working out the Pythagorean theorem before you actually get it? I mean, I must have done that formula 1,000 times, when I was in college, and I still, you put it in front of me, I wouldn't be able to solve it now. But I'm just saying, like, you have to do things over and over again. even as an adult,
Habit.
to learn. Right. You form a habit or to learn something, to learn a skill, to remember.
Becomes ingrained.
Right. And if you have autism, ADHD, or you're neurodiverse, like, dyslexia, dyspraxia, I mean, these things are really challenging because your brain is not wired to remember all the time, even if you have a planner, even if you have, a list. I had a little. She's so sweet. She's like, I get lost in the world of 1,000 thoughts, of all the thoughts. I go to the land of all the thoughts. She said, that is so spot on for these kids. The land of 1,000 thoughts. Who doesn't go there? It's called monkey brain, right? I mean, like, land of 1,000 thoughts. So she's brushing her teeth, or she goes into the bathroom. She looks in the mirror. She looks at her hair. She's going into the land of 1,000 thoughts. Next thing you know, 15 minutes have gone by. She still hasn't brushed her teeth. She doesn't recognize that time has passed. Mom comes in. What are you doing? You're supposed to. So mom,
don't you know what time it is?
Right.
No, that's not effective.
Yeah. So because these children, time is a problem because it's either now or later. There's no 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes.
Do you know you've been in here 15 minutes? No.
No.
Absolutely no clue.
Right. So, I mean, we have strategies like egg timers. Lists can work so that you can check it off, but you do need to have a time, like something that demonstrates time ticking away, or showing, like there's pies that it fills up a color or a picture. There's apps you can use that once the face of the animal is visible, then the time is up, right? That's 30 seconds or whatever you want to set it to.
Right.
So that's how you know time has passed.
Right.
And these are visible cues. And I think that you need a visual cue for that, and maybe an auditory cue.
Yeah, and I think one of the families you're working with right now, you created a visual.
Yes, I'm working on
for
this.
the child. Right?
Yeah, it's a contract, but it's this is I'm trying to make it fun. Like I wrote it up, but you can't just give a 9-year-old this as a written document.
Right.
Sign this. It's a contract. Okay. It has
Sign
to
in
be
blood.
Right. It has to be fun and engaging, and something they want to look at, something they can connect with. So I have my own child helping me with it,
Yeah. No, that's great perspective.
Yeah. And the whys. I mean, I put a lot of why. So I did everything's color. Mm-hmm. So the why is all in green. So brush your teeth. Why? Because if you don't, then you can get cavities. Your breath is going to be stinky. No one's going to want to talk to you. Right. And she's very social. Right. So that's a good why. Right. So for everything she has to do, I put why? Because it's important the child understands why. You can't. I'm not an advocate of just telling a child to do something because I told you to.
Right.
Tell them why. They deserve to know. If somebody came to you and gave you a directive, wouldn't you want to know why? Like get out of the room. Why? What did I do? like why?
Right.
Right. You want to know why.
I've had people do that to me. Well, you know what you did. Actually, I don't.
No, you don't.
I'm not going to explain it to you. That is not helpful at all.
Right. Yeah. You're not going to. Well, that's ridiculous. Yeah. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Yeah. But you know what you did. I'm not going to explain it to you.
You should know. You're an adult.
Awful.
You should know. Or you're
not a mind reader.
Even when I was a child, right? Somebody might have said to me, "You're 14. You should know this."
Yeah. No.
Great. Thank you. But I don't.
I don't.
I'm not intentionally being obstinate or bad.
Right.
Can you show me?
Well, I will say, I believe that kids are not, they just don't have the skills.
Right. Well, it's good back. Dr. Becky's, good inside, right?
Yeah. Everybody's good inside. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Inside, right. And you've got to support that.
Yeah.
And guide that and show that. And if the kid's honestly saying, no, I don't get it,
right,
we'll sit down with them and help them get it.
And when a child has a negative behavior or a negative response and gets angry or does something that you feel like lies to you, there's a reason for that behavior. They're not doing it to be diabolical and mean and disrespectful. They're doing it because either they're afraid or they want this so badly and they know you're going to say no and there's no negotiating, parent, they might feel like you are so strict that you won't even negotiate. There's not something. So, but it's okay. You can still hold a boundary, but you could sit there and so why do you think you did that?
Well, I love that because what parents do is they assign intent to a behavior and then they try
without asking the child.
Yeah, they rush to solve the problem without knowing what the real problem is.
Yes.
And you're solving the wrong problem.
Right.
In a lot of cases.
Right. And, I get it. It's time consuming, but you're a parent. You have to take the time. This is your child. You have to take the time. You're a parent. That's your job.
Right. And I would say leading others in the workplace. This is the same thing, right? Don't assume you know what the intent is, that they're trying to piss you off or whatever the case may be. The same thing is true there, right?
Yeah.
Listen to understand, seek to understand, right? And what you were describing in the behavior in the conversation with the child is seeking to understand.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me, can we agree that you weren't truthful with me just now? Yes. And
well,
tell me more.
So what do you think happened? Did
yeah.
you give the lie back, but not as a lie? Just say, I wonder, is that true? Just ask the question without judgment, because if you have to be careful with this. It's like a slippery slope. There's I have to find the protocol online, because Dr. Becky, I love the way she, approaches it, but, there's a way to approach it without being accusatory and having the child become defensive, because the minute you sound accusatory, even a little bit, the child's going to, no, I didn't do it.
Right. Or moving right to consequences. I think about my oldest child, right? Those times when the homework wasn't done, and they told me it was done.
Yeah.
And remember when I shut all the power off to their room and shut the internet off and took their phones away and everything? I moved right to consequences. Right. I didn't seek to understand the behavior.
Why do you think, what's going on? What's going on?
I didn't seek to understand.
Help me understand what's happening right now.
And that's what I would do different today. That's transformation as a result
transformation.
of what I've learned.
Me too.
I would do things differently. And we are doing things differently.
Yeah.
We can't rewind 5 years ago. We can showcase to others the right behavior and what we've done wrong.
Right. Like, I wish I had me 20 years ago, you know what I mean? Helping me. Because I didn't know.
What your coaching
I didn't
is all
know
about.
what I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you're helping parents of younger children to hopefully avoid some of those minefields and pitfalls that we encountered.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know it's frustrating, and parents, they are like, well, I'm the parent, I set the rules. That's true.
Command and control, or authoritarian.
But we want to think in more terms of, we want to embody, we love our kids, and we want the best for them. So we want to embody that authority. We don't want to create a bully.
Right.
Right. I mean, if you hit your child and you always have this, having a power struggle, and you force your child into doing things, well, that child's going to be so angry, that anger is going to get displaced on other children at school, because they don't have any power. They're disempowered at home.
Right.
So when they go to school now, they want to feel like they have some agency and power and control. So what do?
They act out.
Right? They act out against other children so that they can feel like they have some power over somebody, or the teachers.
Yeah, they rebel against the authority at school because they can't rebel against the authority
at home. Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that happens every time. Look, I'm no psychologist, but that to me is kind of that's been my experience.
Yeah.
So, that you have to be careful with that. And that's why it's important. You don't have to punish or yell and get into a power struggle with your child. You could just take a few minutes, and it's a quick conversation. It's not like you're sitting there for 30 minutes no child is going to listen to you talk about a behavior for 30 minutes.
No, and I think the last thing,
like 5 minutes, not even.
Before we close, could you use the word punish? And I think we want to be clear that we're not saying there's no consequences, right? Because you do want to teach your children that certain behaviors have consequences in life. That's certain decisions have consequences. But, if they were, if you had a young child that was deliberately looking at something on the internet that you said to, and you took their phone privileges away for a week, or internet privileges away, then that's a consequence, right? So there are ways to provide consequences.
That is a consequence.
To teach connections.
But it's not just a consequence. That's you're doing your job keeping your child safe.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't just take the phone away and be like, you looked at porn, I'm taking the phone away.
Correct.
You sit there and talk about how did you feel when you looked at that? Chances are the kid did not feel good.
Right.
That's going to make them really uncomfortable, especially if they're really young and don't understand what they're looking at.
Yeah.
They're uncomfortable, but they're curious. They're naturally curious. So have that conversation. That's a great opening to have that kind of conversation with your child if you haven't already had it. Even if you have, it's also a great opportunity to talk about all kinds of safety issues and what sexuality means and what it is they're looking at and how they feel about what they're looking at. And boy, that's a great opportunity to open up some huge doors for future responses to these kinds of things.
Well, here's an example before we quit for the day. consequences, right? So when I was 15, I joined a bunch of kids on a school bus that was stopped in traffic, making fun of a woman. I'll say she was large, and we were yelling out the window and everything, and she was quite angry, and justifiably so. The bus driver didn't tell us to stop, but she called the school the next day. And, I was in trouble. I was called to the principal's office, and we were all asked to write a letter of apology to this lady individually, which we did. So I say that as a consequence because we hurt somebody, right? And we were taught, right, to be accountable for the behavior, and we were taught to apologize for our behavior when we hurt someone else. So I say that in terms of a consequence, but it was also a teaching at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to, again, you can't, behaviors are going to have natural consequences.
Right. Like if I just got home and somebody beat me for that, what does that do? Right. The woman's still angry, right? Because a lot of, I think parents, in that particular example might go to corporal punishment, right? Well, if my kid did that, I'm going to, belt them in the home or beat them, whatever the case may be. But that's not going to teach them how to change that behavior. But by me having to write that letter of apology to the woman and acknowledging that I hurt her, that helps me correct my behavior. That helps me internally integrate in the change that I needed to be.
Right. But also when you have your child, like you're in public and you have your teenager, tweenager, 9-year-old, yell at you and say things that are disrespectful. And now people are looking at you, and a parent might say, "You're going to let your child talk to you like that?" How many parents will turn on their child at that moment? Yeah. So I think we have to be really careful in that moment, because what they're doing is modeling the behavior that they've learned, probably from their parents or other people.
Yeah.
And they're frustrated and upset. So what's behind the behavior? That's what you want to look at. Why is your child acting like this? What's behind it? So when you do nothing, and I saw this on Dr. Becker the other day, when you do nothing, you're doing so much on the inside. So you may be doing nothing outside, but on the inside, you are being a mature parent who's making sure that they don't lose their shit on their kid in this moment, because that's not going to solve anything other than maybe the parents that just said something to you, them feeling satisfied that they, were able to teach you how to parent your kid.
Yeah.
Which is nobody's goddamn business.
Well, to that point, if there's an escalation, you can exit the situation with your child, take them to a private location, have that conversation. You don't need to berate your child in front of other people to prove anything to anybody.
Right. I mean, all you can do is you can look at your child in that moment and say, you know what? Maybe you can rethink about how you're responding to me right now.
Yeah.
And that's it. The fewer words, the better. Now, all the focus is back on the child.
Right.
And chances are they're not going to continue.
Right. Because
now you have another parent glaring at you. The other kids are looking at you. What are you going to do? So you're not going to stop. You're not going to continue.
Yeah.
So that's a response you could have in the moment while you grit your teeth and keep from, hauling off and beating the shit out of your kid. Because it's frustrating, and I get it. And it makes you feel like you are being disrespected. But there's something more to that behavior, and they're not doing it to disrespect you. There's something else going on.
And it goes back to the thing you've said over and over again, especially true of children that are neurodiverse. They're not giving you a hard time.
They're having a hard time,
right? Mm-hmm. So try not to always see things personally.
And you could say, I get you're having a hard time right now, but I need you to rethink how you're talking to me.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel good. And that's it. You're letting them know that what they're saying doesn't feel good to you right now, and that they're having a hard time. You just validated them.
Right.
And it doesn't feel good what you're saying to me right now. This doesn't feel good.
So there's ways to address the behavior and say things are not okay.
Say it calm, like that.
We had a grown child punch a hole in a wall, right?
No.
So,
But that was a result of medication that they were taking.
That's true too.
Yeah.
But let's sort that out right outside of medication. You can still have a conversation and say, hey, I understand you were really angry with that situation. And I get it. I totally get why you'd be that angry. But can you agree, or can we identify other ways for you to express the anger other than
Yeah. We want to avoid the buts. We want to
hurting
just
property or hurting a person, right?
Yeah. There's no buts. It's but kind of messes things up.
Yeah.
You want to just, and what, how do you think you could have responded differently? Although I will tell you that after I realized that it was the medication that was causing that surge of dopamine and it was dysregulating them. So I don't know if they could have responded differently.
Yeah, maybe it was a poor example, but I've punched holes in walls when I was a kid and an adult too, and it wasn't medication.
Oh,
so I'm saying sometimes we're going to address kids that are going to break things because they're that angry, right? I mean, especially neurodiverse children. Yes. They can get angry enough to break something. They might break your favorite toy or your mirror or whatever, whatever it is that belongs to you, right?
Yeah.
And I think I've had things of mine broken
yes, you have.
by our children, right? And, responding it, I can't believe you broke that. Do you know how important it is to me? That's not helpful. And I think that's how I reacted.
Right. And I had them replace it with their own money, over time. But we did have that conversation and I'm like, what do you think's going on? But that was... Yeah, that was a really tough time. They were having.
But I think it's a fair question to say, what do you think you can do differently?
Yes.
Right? Can you go outside for a walk? Can you go and scream in the middle of the woods or whatever, it is that isn't going to harm somebody or something, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to teach people it's okay to harm because if they start harming things, they'll start harming people.
Right. It never is okay to hit or break things or do anything physically dangerous. It never is. We want to avoid that at all costs. And
without invalidating the anger, it's okay to be angry.
Right.
It's okay. You felt anger. Those are big feelings.
But in the moment,
right?
you have to do, as a parent, you have to keep that child safe. So whatever you need to do, if you need to take that child physically and remove them.
That's true too.
Or bring them to a safe space where they can be angry. Because they don't get to run around the house breaking things and throwing things. Yeah, you don't want to
reinforce it. If you're going to do it out in public, it could bring harm to them.
Right. So in that situation, you need to take that child as the parent and say, you know what? I see you're having a really hard time moving your body into a safe space. I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you. I'm going to visit. So I'm going to, and tell them what you're going to do. I'm going to help you. I'm going to pick you up.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to bring you physically, without hurting them.
Not if they're 6'2" and 180 pounds.
Right. But I'm going to help you. We're going to move into the space over here. And I'm going to help you do it physically. I will take you by the hand. I will put my arm around your waist. I'm going to do this. If it's a small child, obviously you just pick them up, right? Yeah. But I see you're having a hard time doing this right now. And let's get to a safe space where we can, regulate ourselves. Yeah. And I'm going to sit here with you. I'm not afraid of your emotions.
But you know what? In order for you to do that, you have to be regulated.
Yes. And you have to be calm. And I've listen, practice. I years and years of doing this, right? I remember when we first moved here, we were in lots of situations. The more escalated my child got, the calmer I became.
Well, that's the more dysregulated your child is, the more regulated you need
have to be.
That's what I'm hearing.
You have to be.
Absolutely.
Because if you get upset, you can't think.
I was not like that 10, 15 years ago.
No, me either.
I was like, my child gets dysregulated, I'm getting dysregulated. Now we're both up here, right? And we're on a 10.
And you get nowhere. You get nowhere. Mm-hmm. You're both, and then when it's all over, your child's upset, you're upset, you feel like shit, they feel like shit. What happened?
Some people come to blows with their children. That's how it happens, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So, yeah. So if you're listening today and you've learned nothing else from what we've said, it's the more dysregulated your child is, the less dysregulated, your child is, the more regulated you need to be.
Right.
So you need to have like an inverted response. So I think that's super helpful.
An inverse response. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, they're getting more escalated. I need to be even more calm than I was before.
And look at them with curiosity. Try to think curious. I wonder why this is happening right now.
Right.
I wonder what's going on inside their bodies that they really are having a hard time. Just think from that, not they're disrespecting me, everybody's looking, I'm embarrassed. No.
Right.
Fuck everybody else.
Well, I know I've had times where one of the children would say, get the hell away from me. And then I'm like, you can't talk to me like that. Right. That doesn't.
No, right. Because they're like, well, they don't even hear that, right?
You are not allowed to talk to me that way.
Right, because that gets nobody anywhere except maybe other parents are going, that's right.
Yeah.
Go, no, it's not working.
It's not about machoism.
Right. We need to put ourselves on a shelf. Yeah, no, it's really important that we stay calm because that's what mature, emotionally intelligent people do.
Now, it doesn't mean we're a punching bag for people, verbally or physically. So if you're in a situation, you can say, okay, this obviously is not time to have this conversation.
No.
I'm going to give you some space.
Right.
And we're going to come back and talk about this later.
You don't, like I said, when a child or, your child is starting to become physically aggressive, that's when you need to be like, okay, this is not okay. We're going to go to a safe space away from everybody else because you can't ruin it. We're not doing this in public, or we're not doing this, with the whole family. I mean, we're going to move to your room or to a safe space. I'm going to help you do that if you can't do it yourself. Right. And which means I'm either going to pick you up or I'm going to physically help you to another location.
So that takes the parent less out of the role of commander and general or whatever it is to more of a facilitator and a guider.
And if you have, and this is an extreme case, you have a child who's nonverbal, who has aggressive behaviors, you have to teach them something called safe hands. Right. And this has been a thing I've been using a lot. And I actually have seen it's wonderful to see this on Instagram, and parents teaching their children safe hands. So if your child is, and they got safe hands, be gentle, and, just bring their hands together. It's okay. And be calm, right? Shh, the sound shh is calming. Mm-hmm. So safe hands. We're going to have safe hands.
That's why you have to have a calm voice.
You have to have a calm voice.
And that doesn't come naturally to me at all. If
your child hits, you can't hit him back. I mean,
right.
You just don't want to do that. I mean, I guess some people do, but I don't. That's not something I would advocate.
But if your child is being physically or verbally abusive to you, when they're calm and you're having that conversation, that's the time. Yeah. Once you've kind of fleshed out more what's going on.
But if they're being physically and verbally abusive, why?
Right. But get to the why. Yeah. And then
it's not just because they're pissed off at you, and there's something else going on.
Right. But I just want to make sure everybody watching knows we're not saying it's okay. For your child to be verbally and physically abusive.
It's not okay.
It's not okay, but it's how you get there.
You can shut it down. You don't have to hit them and scream at them. You can shut it down way better. And when you do it and validate and show them that you're calm, they're like, oh, okay, that's how it's done. That's how it's done. Right? Because if you escalate, what are they learning?
You just keep teaching them escalation is the way to get it done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're watching us.
Yeah, exactly.
They're watching us.
That's it. They're watching you. So yes, you want to show your child how to behave.
Yeah.
You want to teach them how you want them to respond to you by changing your response to them.
And if you want emotionally regulated children, you have to model emotionally regulated behavior.
That's right.
Yeah. That's it. All right. Anything else you want to add before we close?
No, that's it.
Okay. If you like this episode, please hit like. Please subscribe to our podcast. Visit our Instagram page. And feel free to comment on the podcast or ask us any questions directly.
Or you could visit my Instagram, which is Ability Builder Coach. Ability Builder Coaching and Consulting as the website.
And we'll have the link to your page also, because your website's now live too. So we'll have your link to your website from our podcast page as well.
All right.
Thank you again for tuning in and watching the Personal Transformation Experience podcast.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
Stay calm.